Welcome back to the Rhynestone Podcast. My name is Banner Driscoll, and I'm so happy that you are joining us today. Today's going to be a little bit of a different episode, but I think it's one that's going to be really cool for a lot of people to see. What we're going to do today is we're going to interview 3 artists who have used Rhynestone services, and we're going to talk about the experience of using Rhynestone musicians and Rhynestone Productions as an asset to your musical journey. For a lot of people who don't know, Rhynestone Productions is a virtual music studio. Now, what does that mean exactly? Well, it means is that we can take your demos and transform them into professional works of art. We've done this with so many different artists. We've been doing this for the last 2 years, and it's our bread and butter. It's what we love to do. Our podcast, by and large, is an extension of that because we interview all sorts of people in the music industry, and we break down their tips and tricks and help them so that people can gather that information for themselves and yada, yada, yada. But what we do mostly is our virtual music studio work. And it's phenomenal. We have helped artists do all sorts of crazy things. We've landed Spotify placements. We've done TV show theme songs. We have gotten artists on the radio. We've done this, that, and the other. It's really fun. It's really cool. And our team is just amazing. So I've got 3 artists today, and I want to introduce you to all of them. The first one we're going to talk to is Luke Lemons, who is a songwriter out of Brooklyn, New York. Luke makes very emotional, powerful indie rock music. It's incredible. We got to help him on 3 of his songs this year off his new EP. It is phenomenal. We recorded this interview back in, I think it was probably April or May, and his EP ended up coming out in, I want to say his EP came out in October, but it's very good. You're going to love it. It's really good. Artist number 2 we're going to talk to is Chris Ray King. Chris Ray King is a singer-songwriter out of Scotland. He is an incredible, powerful, emotive vocalist, and we made a country rock song with him called Half a Heart, where we did the full production on this song. With Luke Lemons, we did a few auxiliary instruments and drums and a few things like that, but with Chris Ray King, we did the full production. He was actually the guinea pig for Rhynestone, if you can believe that. Before I even had the full company idea and everything, I pitched him the services, and he paid for them, and we made it happen. It was unbelievable. I even played guitar on the song because we didn't have a guitar player at the time. That's how new this whole thing was. But Chris Ray King's song Half a Heart is actually really good and is really powerful. And it's one of my favorite things we've done at Rhynestone. And again, this interview was done in February, so it's a little outdated, but still good to hear. And the last person we're going to talk to is Slim Picknz. Now, if you've been following us on our podcast, if you've listened to Ad Music, you've heard his song Drunk Drive and Tow Truck Driver. This is where I feel like Rhynestone really stepped it up, and we made something that was just far better than anything else that we've done yet, which is what I really love about Drunk Drive and Tow Truck Driver. And the fact is that we really captured this like 70s throwback soul vibe, but it still sounds modern, it still sounds fresh. And so we interviewed Slim about this process and about his working with Rhynestone. And so what we've done on these interviews is we've just asked everybody to give their experience about Rhynestone, to give their take on how things went and what the Rhynestone process is like and what Rhynestone is all about. And that way, people don't just see us as a company that does podcasts, but they see us for all the other things we do as well. So without further ado, I'm going to give you Luke Lemons' interview. Check it out, and I can't wait for you guys to hear what we've done. Well, one other thing I forgot to mention is we do podcasts for anybody who does more than 4 instruments with Rhynestone. We do a podcast with them. So this is another perk of being with Rhynestone is we do give you media and content for you that you can use as well. So if you'd like to join Rhynestone and get in part of the Rhynestone team and have your music done by Rhynestone, please leave me a comment down below. If you have Instagram, hit us up on Instagram, on TikTok, hit us in the DMs. That's where I'm most active and most talking to people. Or you can message us at rhynestonemusic@gmail.com. That's RHYNESTONE music@gmail.com. That's where I can get in touch with you. We can set up a free consultation and see how we can help your music and take it to that next level. So without further ado, this is our interview with Luke Lemons.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Rhynestone Podcast. My name is Banner Driscoll. I'm the CEO and founder of Rhynestone Productions. At Rhynestone Productions, we have one goal, and that is to empower all musical creators. And I am talking to one of my favorite people that we've had the chance to help with, Mr. Luke Lemons. Luke Lemons is a songwriter from Brooklyn, New York, and he has worked with us on 3 different songs. And the reason I wanted to bring Luke on today is because I think a lot of people, when they hear about Rhynestone Productions, they assume you have to go in and do a full song with us, that you need to do, the guitar, bass, drums, everything. And Luke came to us with a very simple request. He said, I just need drums for a track. And we came in and we delivered. And we're working on our third song right now with him. And honestly, I don't think there's anybody who can talk better about the Rhynestone experience at this level than Luke Lemons. So Luke Lemons, welcome to the podcast, and I'm glad to have you here, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me, Banner.
You're welcome. So Luke, I would love it if you could tell me what your music process was like before Rhynestone entered the picture.
So I've been writing music since a pretty young age. About 12, I got a cheap Coles guitar and started making music. And then through high school, I started recording my own songs. I was using Audacity at the time, which for anybody out there who knows what Audacity is, it's like the MS Paint of any sort of audio recording software. And I was doing it all by myself. I was a part of a few different bands that never lasted too long, nothing professional. I just worked better alone in writing what I want and how I wanted it to sound. Going into college, same thing, and eventually moved into GarageBand, working on songs and creating music that way. But it's always been like a really lonely journey for music, for me at least. And I never had somebody who could commit fully their time to helping me produce music. There were people who would help occasionally or may know how to play drums or could fumble around on the bass. And I was just getting content that I really thought was poor quality. But then I found you guys and your pool of professional musicians at like an affordable price as well. That's another thing that's really sold me. It's elevated my music to a different level because it's like having a band that knows what they're doing, for an artist like me who really just records and writes alone.
And did you feel any was there any tension as far as like working with other people? Like, were you scared at all before you asked for help with working with us? Was there any trepidation?
I think when it came to working with people that you find, let's say on Craigslist or through poster ads or online, I think that there's a dynamic where certain musicians want to make the song theirs, even if they're coming in on a song that is yours. And there's some tension there where they may feel that this is better for the song than you do. And while that may be valid, it is still your song. And so working with Rhynestone, you guys are really good at taking the idea that I have, building upon it in a way in which doesn't feel like it's conflicting of my style or my vision in any sort of way. But there's always tensions in person and with some people you find online, just because they want to be the star or they want it to be their music.
Yeah, and absolutely. I think that's one of the big things that we strive for is, at the end of the day, it's a Luke Lemons song. And it's not a Rhynestone song. It's a Luke Lemons song, and you have to be the one to go out and present that to the world. And if you're not happy with that vision, then not only does that detract from you from promoting your stuff, but it also is not a good reflection of us as a company. So it's awesome that you feel that way and that you feel that you're still making a Luke Lemons song, and these musicians are helping bolster your creativity.
Yeah, and I don't want to make it sound like I want to be a star of everything, but any artist knows, and any musician as well, it's when you create something and you have an idea and it's finally coming together and you're reaching that final phase in mixing or producing it, mastering, EQing, et cetera, you really don't want somebody throwing a wrench into things. And so it's really helpful working with you guys.
And I think that's one of the things too, is like when you do work with a band or you do work with other musicians, a lot of times there's so much drama involved. There's so much like inner band tension from like how we want this to sound, how we want this mix to feel. I need to retrack my drums, or there could be so many different angles. And so one of the things I love is with the caliber of musicians we have, you not only are you getting high quality, but you're getting a high quality instrumentation, but you're also avoiding a lot of the drama that comes with being in a band. And, it's exhausting to be in a band, it really is. It's great. And I'm not telling anybody not to do it, but it can be a very overwhelming experience.
Yeah, and I feel right now, especially in the current state of the music industry, a lot more people are realizing how accessible music is in general, that it's no longer this gated thing that you have to know somebody to get into making music. People are making music like me in my bedroom. There's people who are in high school mixing things for the first time ever, and music is turning more into an individual focused industry, I believe. And so, to your point, bands can be chaotic sometimes, and so it's helpful to find the tools you need to succeed as an artist by yourself.
So one of the things that you have, or the main instrument that you've used with us is drums. All three of your songs that we've done for you, or two of the songs we've done and one we're currently working on, have all used drums. Would you mind telling us about what drummers were like before Rhynestone, and then how your experience working with Erickson has been?
Before Rhynestone, I never really had somebody who was solid for drumming. Drummers were kind of hard for me to find, and the ones that I did find, it just didn't mash up well. They were great people, but it just really didn't end up working out well because they may have lacked some sort of technical element, and they just were trying their best to make the song, but you can tell when drums need work. And I think working with you guys, the drums are incredible. I mean, the production or the rhythm, but working with you guys, the drums that you provide are incredible. The rhythm, the style, and just the files that I get back in general to allow me to manipulate them a little bit and add some effects as well. It's great. It's honestly shocking that there's this much of a quality when it comes to drummer, and it's wild. So I really appreciate the work that you guys do. I think one of the things that I enjoy the most about it is I am the type of musician, when I do work with other musicians, that I want you to bring in your creative element in some sort of way. And so being able to trust that I say, hey, in this section of the song, like, I want it to sound a little like this, but you're an artist too, do what you want. And then to get work back that has that style, that has that creative knowledge, which is so hard to teach. You can know how to play rhythm perfectly and work in a jazz band, but if you can't make music, it's obvious. And the people that you have on staff are creative and know how to make music, and I trust their judgment in an instrument that I am not an expert at. So,
well, I appreciate all that, man. You literally have nailed what I've been trying to tell people for years. Like, it's about making sure that we're making music. There's so many people online who can play crazy lines and tapping and all that jazz. But when it comes down to it, a lot of times music just needs simple parts played well. And that's one of the things a lot of people ask me, like, how do I find the musicians, or what am I looking for? And a lot of times it's just that, like, can you, I remember, I'll give you an example. I was looking for a guitar player a few months ago, and, you go look on Instagram for guitar players and you will find all the shreddy McShreddies out there. And it's not knocking that stuff. It's fun, it's great. But to find somebody who can properly strum straight eights on a power chord, right? Dum, 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 is actually really hard to do. There's not very many people who do it, and not many people show it off. But we found somebody, and I think that's really like a big deal, is having those people that play your music. And so the fact that you've picked up on that and you understand that is great. So
yeah, I mean, Picasso used to draw real life portraits with incredible detail, and because of that skill, he was able to do the simple things like drawing shapes very well. And I think that's so true for music. Yeah, echo everything you said.
That's awesome. So one of the things I also want to bring up is one of the things that's very unique about your music is that you do not record to any sort of click track. And the reason I want to highlight this is I think that a lot of people assume that when you work with us, everything needs to be on a straight beat grid pattern, and that everything is going to be quantized and put in perfectly. but none of the stuff we've done for you has been quantized. Am I right?
Yeah, no, none of it has. With click tracks, I've tried recording on the past with them. But I found that doing internal rhythm, this natural rhythm that all people have, everybody has some sort of rhythm. Watch anybody at a bar clap along to a song or tap their foot. It feels more, there's something about going with the flow of natural rhythm, and a song can grow and recede in a way in which doesn't feel computized. It doesn't feel inhuman. And so I was worried, and I have ran into problems with drummers in the past because I'm not perfectly hitting every beat every time. Not to say that I'm sloppy with everything, but I wasn't super technical with it, because sometimes you fall and sometimes you speed. And having a drummer that you guys provide that understands that and is dynamic to adjust to that is, again, something that's hard to teach and is a great skill, because even listening to the songs afterwards, it doesn't sound like this wasn't on a click track, which is great, because no song should sound like it wasn't on a click track either. You look at songs by Nirvana, a lot of times they didn't do click tracks, and like it still sounds like great music. So I think anybody who's dissuaded by not being in perfect rhythm should embrace the idea that we are human and it's natural for us to have rhythms that are more dynamic.
And to your credit too, like you said, I don't think your music is you don't perform it sloppy. Obviously there's like low fidelity elements to it because, you're indie rock guy like I am. But you're still putting your heart into every single performance. And so I think one of the big things is you need musicians who match that, right? Like the drums need to match the intensity of the rise and peaks and valleys of your music, whether that is tempo or whether that's dynamics or volume. And I think that was one of the things I was so happy when we started working with you, is I wasn't really sure if that was going to work. I remember I had a lot of reservations about doing it, but once we get the drums in, I feel like everything has a much better, the things that we do have a much better chance of locking in. And I think that's been one of the great things, has been just watching how these songs have developed and how much better they get as soon as you add like a really solid drum track to it.
Yeah, I was using like a MIDI keyboard for songs in the past to do drums, and it's noticeable now, and that's part of the reason too why we're working on this newest song that we've been doing was because I was looking through old files and I was listening to the music, and this track originally didn't have the drums that you guys provided, and I'm like, well, now that like on this EP, the standard is set, like I can't go from this song with killer drums to me like messing around on a drum machine. So,
and that's awesome. Like I think it's great to know that like because we have brought our musicians in, it's raised your game. You've set a new standard for yourself, and you want to achieve that. And I think that's super commendable. I think that's the Rhinestone effect right there, is like, oh shit, like we can do this. We can take our music to even higher levels. And I think that's what's going to be so awesome, is I just can't wait to see what you do with this music and with the music you keep writing. Because the thing I really love about your music is it just, I feel like I know you because I've worked on your music and listened to your music. And I think that's one of the things that I'm glad that our musicians are able to help you, and I feel like it pushes that forward. And I can't wait for more people to discover you and more people to find out more about you.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Yeah, anybody who wants to listen to me, go ahead. I welcome it fully.
So what can you tell us? I know obviously we're working on the songs right now, but what can you tell us about this new EP that you're working on?
So this is the first collection of songs that I put out in a long time. The last album that I put out was completely by myself, and that was in like 2018. And during that time, I was in Colorado, and I lived in Colorado. I moved out to New York. I ended up living with my ex-girlfriend at the time, and we broke up. COVID hit. A lot of changes happened in my life, very traumatic things as well, involving like deaths of friends. And I've just been sitting on a catalog of songs that I've not put out there. I've put out random singles of some stuff that I've had time to work on, but this EP is some of those songs that I really want out there. I want to get it out there so that it feels like it's off my back, if that makes sense. To get that trauma, to get the chaos, to get like the love, the happiness, whatever, like to kind of wash yourself clean of it. That's how I see making music and putting it out there, is to kind of get it out. But I think that the themes of this EP are more, it's a melancholy happiness, that feeling where you are at one point just so without a care, and it no longer becomes sad, not caring. It becomes a freedom of knowing I don't care about anything, and you at that point hit a threshold and you now are happy. And it's a weird transition, but it happened to me, and I wanted to kind of capture some of those feelings and what led up to those feelings as well.
Well, I gotta tell you, man, I'm glad you're capturing those feelings, because I really like what you're doing, and I think you're doing some amazing stuff. So when can we expect to hear this new EP from you?
So once I get the track back, or the drums back from you guys, I'm going to start mastering that and mixing it all together. And I'm shooting for hopefully mid-July, if not early July, just to get a few songs into the bank and have them reviewed by some of the song channels like Spotify and Apple Music. But that we're looking for the summer.
That's awesome. Do you have a name for the EP yet? Anything you can share with us?
I don't. I always try to wait until the last minute to name these things. And yeah, because once the project's complete, that's when you can kind of see it as a whole. And maybe sometimes it's like a random lyric that sticks with you, or maybe it's a bigger idea. But no, it's untitled project right now. But I've got other stuff out on Spotify if anyone wants to take a listen. Go on Apple Music, anything on YouTube. Just search Luke Lemons and you'll find my sad, happy, stupid little songs.
I love it. My favorite song of yours, we didn't do it, but I love this song, is Taking the A Train. Taking the A Train is... That's a banger, man. That's just like...
Yeah.
I love that song.
I was sitting on that for a while, and I just decided to record it. I actually did all the tracks in, I think, like overnight, just in like 12 hours, like of just like sitting down and doing it over and over and over again. But that's just about living in Harlem and having to commute downtown to see somebody that you care about, and how you're in a dream state for most of that phase.
No, I love it. It's just it's a great song. It reminds me a lot of like The Replacements a lot. I think that's, and I always really liked that song. That's one of my, I have that saved on a playlist. So when I work on Rhinestone stuff, I'm always like, whenever I consult with somebody, or I'm about to work with somebody, I do like a deep dive, and I have multiple playlists of songs I found of people that I've consulted with, and that's probably the most played song on that playlist, because it's just a banger. Everyone should check out Song Out.
Oh, yeah, thanks. That's great. It's always, I don't know, I'm terrible at receiving compliments, but thank you.
It's fair. So after this EP, what's next for you, Luke Lemons? You got shows? Are you going to put together a band? You are in New York City, so that is like a big mecca for music. So what's next on the next 6 to 12 months for you?
I think first and foremost, get the album or get the EP out. I'm going to start doing mics and booking so far shows, and also working with trying to maybe get some sort of label involved. But I've been talking to a few people who may like know how to play bass. I obviously need, if I'm going to be doing live stuff, somebody who can do like the drum tracks that you guys have provided. Otherwise, I can just do like an acoustic tour. But yeah, it's mainly release the EP, start doing live promotion and sets, and yeah, just continue growing as a musician. So just continuing down that path.
That's awesome. The songs are so good. The music is there. I really just see success in your future with music. Like, I mean, as long as you put the work in to promote it and get it out there, like I really don't see you not succeeding at some level.
Oh, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Well, thank you, Luke. I appreciate you being here today and spending some time with us, and look forward to working with you again in the future.
I look forward to continue to working with you guys as well. You guys have been fantastic, and I'll probably end up talking to you later today as we talk more about music.
Hey, that's what's up. I love it. All right. Well, thank you, Luke. Appreciate you being here.
All right. Thank you.
Fantastic interview with Luke Lemons. Luke is such a great songwriter, and I was so happy that Rhynestone was able to amplify his music through the use of our musicians, especially our drummer Erickson. Erickson just nailed his songs out of the park. We even got to add cello to one of the songs, End of My World. That one's my personal favorite. Luke is just such a great songwriter, and we're still working with Luke, which is phenomenal. He's come back again and again and again to work with Rhynestone because he understands how important that quality is. So before we go to our next conversation with Chris Ray King, I wanted to tell you guys a little bit more about Rhynestone and how we run things. So Rhynestone, we have a 3-tiered process, and this is how this works, right? The first thing is our pre-production. Before you even lay down a note with one of our musicians, we're going to talk about where we want your song to go, how we want your song to sound, what kind of playlist we kind of want to aim for with the production of it, what kind of goals you have as a musician. So if you're trying to land on pop radio versus trying to land on a slimy grunge playlist on Spotify, there's a different way you're going to mix and record and play those kinds of songs. So we get all that business kind of stuff out in front to make sure that whatever song you release, it not only represents you, but gives you the most opportunities for success on your musical journey. Our second step is our world-class session musicians. These are the guys that are A+ performers. This is our team of about 20 musicians we have on our squad. And whatever you instrument you can think of, you name it, we have it. We have drums, we've got bass, strings, horns, guitars, bass, cello, violin, you name it, we've got it. And these are not just your run-of-the-mill average Joe Blows doing this on the weekend. No, these are guys that are in multiple ensembles. They're teaching, they are on the ground, playing in cover bands. They're playing with pop stars in Brazil. These guys are playing with, I've even got guys that are in like Metallica acoustic cover bands. I've also got another guy who plays in the symphony. It's just, these are the A+ guys. And it's not only that they're A+, it's also that they're versatile and that they are adaptable to any situation, because that's really what's important to me at Rhynestone about our musicians. And the third thing, and this one is really, really important, is mixing and mastering by our own Sleeping Orchard. Sleeping Orchard is an incredible mixing engineer that we know and love. And what he is able to do is, again, in the same way that we kind of talked about in pre-production, we make sure that we mix from a business sense. And what that means is you're not going in looking for the best mix. You're looking for the mix that'll help put you in the place where you sound like other artists, where you sound close enough sonically that a fan of this band will really like you, and vice versa. We put you in that position so that you can succeed. And it's worked over and over and over again. So what I'd love to do is I would love to set up a free consultation with you about Rhynestone, about what we do. And the easiest way to do that is to get in touch with us via email. That email is rhynestonemusic@gmail.com, RHYNESTONE, music@gmail.com. Again, that's rhynestonemusic@gmail.com. And I really want you guys to hit me up if you're ready to take that music to the next level. As you heard from Luke, Luke was struggling for a long time to find a drummer who could keep up with his music and to find these other things in bass and stuff like that. And once he found Rhynestone, it exploded his creativity. And I think that's something that we need to think about again and again and again, is we need to find things that expand our creativity. And that's what Rhynestone does every single time. So now, without further ado, I want to introduce our next guest. Our next guest is Chris Ray King. Chris Ray King, as I said in the intro, is a songwriter based out of Scotland. And again, Chris Ray King was the guinea pig for Rhynestone. And it was really good because we were able to work out so many kinks through his song. We worked a lot about time management, project management, workflow. We figured out some musicians that we didn't know we needed before that process. We were able to work with Chris on getting the sound exactly right and how many drafts and stuff like that. And it was really good because even though we did have to work out a lot of kinks, we did finish with a great song, with an amazing song. Half a Heart is an incredible, powerful song that Chris wrote, and the lyrics are just beautiful. I highly recommend you guys go check this song out. And so without further ado, here's our interview with Chris Ray King.
Hey everybody, we're talking today to Chris Ray King, a singer-songwriter from Edinburgh, Scotland, who released his first album in 2020, God's Own Engineer, along with several other EPs and singles. His style bounces around a lot, but you can always expect clever yet melancholy lyrics. Chris Ray King was also guinea pig #1 for Rhynestone, and we just finished his song last week, Half a Heart, which should be available later this year in 2023. Chris Ray King, welcome to the Rhynestone Podcast. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, Banner. How are you?
I'm doing good. So, Chris, as someone who has recorded a lot in a studio environment, how was working with Rhynestone different than your previous experience in the studio?
Well, it was really different. I mean, it was much less hands-on for me, obviously, you know, so as Rhynestone, you were kind of organizing the sessions and, you know, sending me back things to listen to, but that process was sort of invisible to me. So I you know, and I was a bit skeptical. I mean, I'm used to working in studio environments. I've done a couple of things where I've used remote recordings and often had problems with recordings in different environments. So that was a real pleasant surprise. I think the quality of what came back and the way we've been able to glue it together into a song was really surprising for me. Having worked mostly in a studio and not worked with sort of remote musicians.
Well, you said you worked with some remote musicians. What was different between Rhynestone's remote work and other remote musicians you've worked with?
Well, I think there were two things. I think the recording quality was universally good, surprisingly so. So I think when I worked with remote musicians in the past, you're very dependent on what they have to record on how well their room is set up and so on. And that's been really variable. I didn't find that with any of the tracks in the mix from Rhynestone. I think they're all good quality. So that's the first thing. I mean, the second thing is the production service. So it's not like, you know, booking a session or paying someone on Fiverr to play a session and you just get back what you get back. You know, you were in the process. So what I found was that you were overseeing the quality of what came back. You know, you weren't passing stuff to me that you didn't think was good. You were sort of giving me maybe a commentary on it. So I felt there was some real quality control on what was coming through, and somebody else was listening and filtering what I heard before it got back to me.
Yeah, and that's one thing I think I really want to make sure we do with musicians is like, we want to make sure that you are achieving the goals that you set out to achieve, you know, and you're not just left alone to your own devices, you know. And yeah, I mean, would you go a little further into that and talk about like what is, I hate talking about it because I'm talking about myself here, but as far as like what having a producer on hand to help you with these sessions, what that gives you as a songwriter?
Well, yeah, I mean, this was a difficult song for me. It's a song I wrote a couple of years ago, in fact, but I haven't been able to do anything with because it's sort of been somewhat beyond, you know, my immediate capabilities to record it. So I had a couple of goes at it and had left it, but I still thought it was a good song. So I think, you know, I'm sorry, I'm going about this question kind of a bit of a strange way, but I'm really pleased with the final outcome. And I think that's what you brought to it. I think first, you know, there was a lot of discussion about what it was I wanted from the song and what the style was to be, you know, and I think what was important for me was that it came back and still sounded like a Chris Ray King song, not just one of my songs that somebody else had produced. And I think that's really the case. So for me, that's the quality of the production. That's listening to the artist, understanding what it is that they want, and then the ability to translate that into a sound, both in terms of the performances we captured and the ultimate sort of mix and mastering and the whole flavor of the finished thing. It's great. It sounds like me, and that's what I wanted.
Man, I couldn't ask for a better compliment than that for sure. Like that's definitely going to be a sound bite. Let me take a note of that. 433. What surprised you most about the recording process with Rhynestone?
I think I've kind of covered that. I think the quality of the work, you know, both in terms of the musicianship and the performances. I mean, really first rate, really, really good performances, but also the recorded quality and the usability of what we had. So that was good. I mean, that really surprised me. I think another aspect that was really good was the sort of the patience with kind of repeated things. So I think if you remember, you played some great guitar on this track. You played the lead guitar and the electric guitar on the track. And I think initially, it wasn't really on brand for me. It was maybe a bit raunchy, a bit rockier than I would normally put into a song. And you kind of listened to that, you went back, you really totally changed your approach. Similarly with the piano, I think we had a couple of goes at getting the piano, in the right vibe for the song. And again, you put a lot of work into it. I mean, the work that went in was fantastic. I couldn't fault it. I felt like the client all the way through. I was just getting great service and really someone really listening to what I want and going back and reworking. So service was really good. You said what surprised me. I mean, I think I was surprised with how patient you were at times. I thought I was a pain in the ass. I was a major pain in the ass.
Really?
Well, maybe not.
I thought I was the pain in the ass.
but you were so patient, so you kind of listened, and if things weren't right, you went back and got it right. So great experience, much better than I expected. I expected kind of good, but it was way better than I expected.
That's awesome. And you feel happy with the final product?
Yeah, very much so. It's great. I mean, I'm about to set it up for release. I'm just getting that organized. I wouldn't release it if I wasn't happy with it. So that's the first thing. But it's more than that. It's not just, hey, here's a great shiny song that's got good musicians on it and had some good production. I do think it's on brand. As you know, we kind of went for a sort of, in the end, a sort of, retro vibe to the whole thing, with the sort of treble rolled off a bit, and yeah, it's not that nice analog feel I like. I'm really, really happy with it. Really happy to release it.
Yeah, I think one of the things I really wanted to do with that song, and especially you, because for those who don't know, I've known you for a long time. We've known each other for a few years now on a very, I mean, we were talking daily for over a year, and I think the thing I really wanted to do was take Chris Ray King and update him for 2023. I think I wanted to, I think your records, I'm not trying to bash on your records or anything, but I think your records, you hold a very strong ties to the past. And I think I just wanted to update like certain things. I wanted to have like just a little more, like there's people that do that like Americana, folky, a slight country, like Neil Young type thing, but they make it sound modern for 2023. And I think I wanted to just put you into that echelon of artists, And so that was like a big thing for me with that song was, how do we add things that will put, you in the position where we can get you on like an Americana playlist. We can get you on a country playlist. We can get you on a new, a playlist like that on, whether if you were to do Submit Hub or you to do Spotify editorials, we're just trying to give you the best shot with the music that we create. And so it was a bit of work. I think the hardest part, I think, definitely was the piano and the guitars, the electric guitars, because I think that those are like the icing on top, as opposed to like the rhythm section. Rhythm section is pretty basic. It's just straight ahead drums. Bass is just hitting the accent in the kick drum with a few fills here and there. But I think having the piano and the guitars work in tandem around your voice, I think was probably the hardest part. And I think it's probably the part I'm most proud of. I know I played guitar on it, but I just love the way that there's never a moment where nothing happens. There's always like, as soon as you come out of the gate, electric guitar hits, then the piano comes in with some nice little tasty licks, and then it's your voice. And your voice carries the song. And then as soon as your voice drops out, okay, there's a piano riff, or there's a guitar riff, or there's a guitar solo, And I think those are my favorite things so far about that song. I think that it's just nothing, even though it's, pushing 5 minutes, I think it doesn't feel boring at all, which is very hard to do. I mean, firsthand how hard that is to do, not be bored in a 5-minute song, right?
Yeah, I know. My wife keeps saying that if it gets any airplay, they're going to cut it off in the middle 8. So maybe it's too long. But yeah, so I think there's clearly some creative tension there. I mean, you're trying to drag me into the 21st century. I think I spent the whole process trying to drag the song back into the 20th century. But maybe that was a good outcome. So I think a happy compromise. I mean, it's, as you know, I record to tape a lot of the time. I love that whole analogy thing.
Yes, me
and
too.
I think that automatically gives you an old school sound. And you've got some of that in what you produced, which I think again is part of the cleverness of the production. It's a fully digital remote production, but you've still got that. So for me, I'm not sure you successfully dragged me into the 21st century. We'll see if it gets some airplay but I love the sound. I love the sound. It's exactly what I was looking for. It's exactly what I was looking for.
So one of the things that I really was excited about with this song as well was that you not only got to use our Rhinestone musicians, but you also got to use our mixing and mastering services, and you got to be in the hands of Sleeping Orchard, Will Galloway. And what I would love you to elaborate on is how that process went. How was the mixing and mastering service? Because the thing I want to emphasize with people is that they are a different service. Whereas, we have limited takes on the musicians. We try to keep everything between 2 and 3 takes with our musicians. When it comes to mixing and mastering, that's a whole different process. And we like to make sure that the artist, all the details are taken care of, So would you mind telling me about the process for you? What was it like, especially as an audio engineer who does mixing and mastering on their own?
Yeah, I mean, so letting go of that was quite difficult for me, as you probably sensed. And I think there's a lot of subjectivity in mixing, which is the problem I've had in the past with using an external service and someone else to do the mixing. But firstly, I mean, I think just to say, I think we talked about sort of 5 iterations on the mix, and we got there within the 5. So it's not as if it was an interminable process. And again, like everything else, I mean, you communicated, you were involved in the process, so we had your ears on it as well as mine. I communicated with Will. He listened and came back. So it was good. It was iterative. I mean, I think there are, we inevitably maybe sort of got down 1 or 2 blind alleys on a couple of things that weren't going to go anywhere, but we quickly corrected that. And proof of the pudding. I mean, we came out with a great product. I mean, I think it's really, you talked about the mastering service. I think it's really worth mentioning that, because I think for anyone else who's working with Rhinestone, getting the song mixed, of course, that's great, and that's what you want. But getting that final polish for release was really, really important. And I think we made some of the most important decisions there, in that final sound and what we were looking for. So I do see those as separate processes. And hopefully the other artists who work with you are going to want to work through those steps with you as well. It was really good.
Yeah, I think there's 2 things here. The first, I think Will Galloway, Sleeping Orchard, one of the things I love about him is he may not have all the best equipment, but he has some ears. He is so good at picking up the frequencies and putting them together in a way that I feel like really complements the song. He's always the person I go to whenever I have any mixing questions on my own music, and he is able to just hear little frequencies. And I think that's one of the things I like. And then the other thing I think too is that you can go and use mastering services. There's AI mastering services. I don't know if you're familiar with Lander at all. That's a very popular one people use all the time. Hip hop loves it, where it basically just takes the volume and just boosts it up and makes sure there's no clipping. But I like that to an extent, because obviously it's easy, it's effective, but I also have a hard time with it because you don't get that touch, and I want things to sound personal. I want them to sound like you said, we work to make a Chris Ray King song, and I think that needs to come through even in the mastering, So I'm really glad that you pointed out how important the mastering process is, and that is something that I want to emphasize to people, is that mastering really helps take a song. It can take a song that's, sounds 80% there and bring it to 95 or to 100,
Yeah, I mean, mastering is a lot more than getting the level up. I mean, I think it's taking a step back with what you've got with a finished mix. just making those little corrections, getting the real sound you want, getting the final EQ right, as well as getting the level right. So the song sounds materially different after we finish mastering it, and it's a song I'm happy to release. So that's great.
That's awesome. So then I just lost my notes here. Has Rhinestone changed your attitude about what's possible in regards to your music?
I think it's made me more open to doing more work in the digital realm. As you know, I'm pretty wedded to working on tape and the whole analog thing. But I've revisited this because we got such a good result. I was very happy with the sound. It didn't, it overcame a lot of my objections to doing digital stuff. So that was a big change. Certainly, it's opened my mind a bit about that. Clearly, I would work with you again. I'm
hoping for it.
Yeah. I like doing stuff on my own. We perhaps all do. I kind of, I like locking myself in here and working away at stuff. But you can't do everything. And just like as with this song here, was a song that I think was beyond my kind of project studio sort of skills and abilities as a musician. And I'd come to you again on that. I think I was really pleased with the result. I have worked, I've worked in other studios and with external producers, and I haven't been as happy with the results.
I think Chris, you're making my heart
part
warm.
Of that. Yeah. Well, no, I'm not just kind of, blowing smoke. It's, I think I really mean that. Partly I think because we were working online and working remotely and sharing versions, and we had chance to sort of consider and come back and comment and discuss it. I think that gives you, a little bit more time to consider in putting your song together. Whereas, you're in the studio, you're on the clock, you're under pressure. You kind of make a decision, and then you get out, you listen to it 2 days later, and you go, "Oh no, I didn't like that." So I think the remote working process was good. I became, after a while, I got into the habit of not getting back to you straight away, but giving it a little bit of time to try stuff on, see if I liked it, and then when I came back, I was confident. Look, this is the real feedback. This is my considered view of it. So that's worked very well. I like that. So I'd definitely do that again.
Yeah, that's a really good point too. Actually, I've never considered that with Rhinestone, that, when you do have to work it slowly, right? Like, we can't just go in and bang out the song in a day, right? Like, we do the drums, then we do the bass, then we do the rhythm instruments, and then we put the, what I call the icing, the lead guitars, piano, keyboard solos, stuff like that. But yeah, you do have to really, like, step by step listen to it and make sure that everything works and everything's in line, and that you get to really comb over every detail of the process. I never actually really considered that till now. That's a really good point.
Yeah, it is. And I can tell you, it's a lot better than working real time in the studio, where you're having to make decisions on takes and mixes, in the moment. And I almost always come to regret that, and sort of listen to it, well, that's not quite as good as I thought it was. So I like that. I like that. Look, it makes it a bit iterative. No, I was just going to say it makes it a bit iterative. It takes a bit of time, but I think it's time well spent if you're considering carefully what you've got and making good choices about the production.
Yeah, and I think there's also, like, because I've been in a studio a lot. I've done a lot of different things and sessions and stuff. And one of the things I've noticed, especially when you cut things live with a full band, right? One of the things that happens is you feel a certain way when you play it live, like it feels great, like it feels like a live performance. But then you go back and you listen to it and you're like, wow, that sounds like garbage, but that felt so good. That felt so good. Like, why doesn't it feel the same way when I listen to it? And it's because it's a completely different art. Live performance, I stress this so much, is that live performance is so much different than a recording, because there is an element of communication. There's an element of theater in live performance, right? The way the band looks, the clothes they wear, that adds to a performance. Whereas a recording, you don't have any of that available to you. Recording, you have to get it. You get it once so that someone can listen to it 1,000 times. Whereas with live performance, you play it 1,000 times to make people want it to hear it once live. And that's a really good point. I can't believe I've never thought of that. That's why I love talking to people like this, especially, clients, because I get this sort of feedback. That's really great.
Yeah, no, I mean, your thoughts are really interesting. I mean, I think there's a massive difference between, a good live musician and a good studio musician. Yeah, and some folk who are good at both, of course, but that's different.
Yeah. So Chris, I wanted to tell you, so people just know, so we're clear, you were guinea pig number 1 for Rhynestone, and I thought as soon as I came up with the concept for Rhynestone, I was like, Chris Ray King has got to be client number 1, because you just, we've talked about recording so much, we've talked about quality musicians. I know you're a big fan of the 70s, like I am, those classic, amazing studio musicians. And but I want to be open to tell people, like, I cut you a really good deal on the product, and you paid pretty much the musicians' rates, and I got nothing out of it. So to be honest, your song would cost about a little under $600 to make, US dollars, obviously. Do you think that that's a fair price for what you got out of it?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I do. It's really good value. I mean, you've got to look at the alternatives, I guess. I suppose I could have sat home laboring away in the project studio, produced a version of it for less money, given all my sort of costs here are sunk. But if I'd gone to a third party studio, I'd have paid a lot more than that. I mean, I have to talk in pounds rather than dollars, of course, because I'm in the UK. But I mean, I think for that bigger production and then mixing and mastering, realistically, I mean, that's a good that's a good 3 days of studio time, I would think. So you're probably going to be looking at twice that if I'd gone into a physical studio to record it, at least twice. So yeah, I think it's great value. Yeah.
So just so people know, I just checked, and $600 amounts to 500 pounds.
Yeah, that's right. So, I would, so, I mean, it kind of depends on what rate you're paying, but I mean, for a decent studio, you're going to pay, I would think, £350 a day at least. So 3 days of studio times £1,000.
Yeah.
And I think you're easily going to burn up that to produce a long song and a big production like that with a lot of musicians in. But that's before you put in session fees and so on. That's just studio time.
So, and that's another thing too, is you not only are you going to be paying for the studio, you're going to be paying for a producer who may also be your engineer, mixing person, whatever. So you might be paying 2 people. You're going to be paying your musicians, which can be free sometimes, but a lot of times those studio musicians that you want that are at the quality of Rhynestone musicians, they're going to be $300 a day easily. And then you're also going to be have to feed them, to take care of them. If you have rehearsals, a lot of times people are going in with rehearsals and stuff like that. So it can get so expensive really quick. And I think that's one of the things I wanted to do with Rhynestone, is to eliminate a lot of that excess, Not that we don't love a good studio. I've been in studios my whole life. I love it. But for me, the biggest thing is making it as easy as possible for musicians to get high quality recordings. And I think that's what we did with you for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we've got a product that for me is studio quality.
Yeah.
I'm not hearing any difference.
Well, that is awesome. So Chris, I want to wrap this up, man. Tell us where we can find you online, and then tell us what you have coming up next.
Okay, where can you find me online? Well, I'm Chris Ray King on Instagram, or I'm Chris Ray King on Twitter. I'm big on Twitter as well. I'm quite often there. Obviously, you can find me on Spotify, Apple Music, and all the rest. I'm on Bandcamp as well, which I'm keen to do more on Bandcamp. So please go and find me there, and you should be able to do that. Just look for my name. What next? I mean, the first thing is to get Half a Heart released. we're getting the artwork sorted out here, and that's going to be put up for release in the coming weeks. So and then really putting some effort behind that, hopefully promote it.
Do we have a release date yet?
Not yet, no. We could make one up, couldn't we, in the middle of this podcast? But that's probably in a couple.
I don't want to hold you to it now. Okay, good. That's awesome.
I'm thinking early March. I mean, you need to allow a bit of time for DistroKid to do their stuff, don't you? So I'm thinking early March.
Yes.
So yes, I'm going to release Half a Heart, get behind that, get that promoted, try and get it some attention, some airplay, some playlisting, and so on. So really keen to do that. And then I'm working on some new material. I'm keen to record a second album. I like working the album format and putting together collections of songs. So I've sort of started work on that. I've curated a good list of songs to work through. So I'm busy working away in the home studio on those. We've been, as you know, shared a couple of ideas with you. You're very patient at listening to my ideas, and we're keen to do another track together. So no doubt that's going to be happening in the future as well.
Man, you have one song that I have been playing the demo of almost at least once a week since you sent it to me, which is the Jesus Engine, man. And so if you guys don't know, Chris Ray King, when his stuff is very, I would say, melancholy and slightly down-tempo, not down-tempo, that's not the right word. You have a folksy wisdom vibe about your music a lot of times. And so Chris Ray King sent me this one demo one time and was just like, hey, this is so different than what I normally do. And it was the most snarky political commentary and social commentary track I think I'd ever heard from him. And it was so fun because I think I'm so used to you having all this wisdom when you do your lyricism, and to see you pissed off about something was the most entertaining, because I know you. I've known you for so long now that it was so weird to see that flip, because I'm usually the one who's pissy and sarcastic and stuff and my lyricism. So to hear it from you, I think was very satisfying. So I'm praying the Jesus Engine is the next song we do together for sure, because I love that track.
Okay, I think we should. Well, look, let's hope we earn plenty of money off Half a Heart, and that'll. Let's just do that bit again, shall we? Because I should get this. Okay, well, let's make sure we earn some money off Half a Heart, and then we can reinvest that in recording the Jesus Engine, amongst other songs.
Yeah.
But I'm looking forward to doing that with you. That'd be good. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Chris, I think this is a good place to wrap up. Thank you so much for your time, man. Thank you so much for being here, and I can't wait to work with you again.
And that was Chris Ray King on the Rhynestone Podcast. Thanks so much, Chris, for trusting us with his song Half a Heart, which you can hear on all streaming platforms now. It is amazing how we were able to help Chris Ray King. I just found out from Chris himself that he landed on 2 playlists because of this song. Playlists he didn't even pitch for. People found his song and were able to put it on their playlist, which is just amazing. That's kind of the Rhinestone effect. You know, when you put that quality and that care and that touch into your music, people respond to it, which is how doors open. So now I want to talk about my last guest today. Our last guest is the fantastic Slim Picknz. Slim I met at a Smith's open mic here in Atlanta, which is a great open mic for a lot of songwriters. And Slim was just so fantastic. He played this song called Drunk Driving Tow Truck Driver. And as soon as I heard it, I was like, that's got to be a Rhinestone song. It's just too good. People know it. People are vibing to it really well. And he just was really kind of afraid to get into the studio and spend the kind of money to get that quality up that, you know, is necessary for a song of that caliber. And I'll tell you what, as soon as we started working, Chuck just lit up creatively. And what's been really cool is to see Chuck blossom from kind of I wouldn't say a struggling artist, but an artist, you know, really scared to make a mark, into this artist who just has blossomed with his creativity. I just saw him recently a couple of weeks ago, and he just blew my mind with how good he's gotten. So I want Chuck to share his Rhinestone experience. Slim Picknz, this is Slim Picknz on the Rhynestone Podcast. Check it out. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Rhynestone Podcast. Today I am talking with Slim Picknz. Slim just released a brand new song called Drunk Driving Tow Truck Driver that was fully produced, co-written, and mixed and mastered by Rhynestone Productions. And I gotta say, man, I think this is one of the best songs we've done. It was so much fun to make something this funky and this fresh. And it was just a great song, man. And I really appreciate you working with us on letting us work on this song with you.
Oh, bro, from start to finish, man, from the day we met, it's been such a fun process. I can't thank you enough, obviously, for all the help. And yeah, I'm just so proud of it, and just really proud of the way it all sounds at the end, you know.
And that's awesome to hear. So what was music making like for you before the Rhinestone entered the picture?
Oh, well, I've been playing music for 20 plus years. I played drums. I've sang lead singer in bands. Most currently played keyboard in a band in Mobile for about 10 years. So keyboard is probably my biggest passion. But just writing songs that touch people within the past couple of years has been a big focus of mine, you know. The idea that you can make music with other people is huge, and that's kind of been the majority of my, you know, musical journey. But like I say, for the past 2 years, it's been more of a solo, focus. So that's been it the majority of the time.
Had you ever explored recording music on your own, like whether that be in a studio or home recording before Rhinestone entered the picture?
Very little. Like I say, I played in a band in Mobile, so we recorded a few things. But in that process, it was more, like I say, a collaborative effort where we're together when we're recording. Whereas with this process, it was more remote. So that was a new experience for me, but it was fun.
Now, I love that you brought up the remote factor because I think a lot of people are weary of the virtual studio model because it's not as you're not watching the musicians in the studio, or you're not getting that studio experience. Do you feel that the track suffered at all because of the remote experience?
No, not at all. It was just a different approach. You know, I got to hear tracks as the musicians recorded them, and then kind of give feedback on how we could tweak it and make it different. So for me, it gave me a little more control, as where, you know, when you're in a band, everybody kind of goes their own direction that they feel is good, which is great. It gives you that different sound, a collaborative sound. But this was great because I got to sort of point the music in the direction I thought it should go, if that makes sense.
No, that 100% makes sense. And I think that's one of the things I really pride myself on Rhinestone, is that it doesn't sound like a Rhinestone song, but it sounds like a Slim Picknz song. Yeah. And do you feel that happened? Do you feel that the recording that we did with our musicians remotely all over the world, do you feel that it turned into a Slim Picknz song?
100%, yeah. Like I say, Slim Picknz, the persona itself is something that I'm still kind of developing and deciding what the sound should be and what, you know, Slim's kind of look should be, obviously. But yeah, it was cool because, like I say, I had this idea of it, certain parts of the song, and then when it would come back, and I'm like, well, I think it needs to drop out a little more there. Well, let's add this part to the melody here. You know, again, it just gave it a much more of a personal touch. And then at the end, it was like, oh man, that was my input there that made that happen, you know. So yeah, it definitely felt like it was my song.
And that's awesome to hear. You know, I think one of the things too is, like I said, like it's just the big thing for me is it obviously it's going to have a bit of a Rhinestone sound because we use the same high quality musicians for every song and so on and so forth. But if you don't feel that it represents you as an artist, then you're not going to promote it as hard. You're not going to work the song. You're not going to get it out there in front of new people. You're not going to play it as much. And right. That's what I want. I want to make sure is that you're happy with it. That's the most important thing. Now, obviously, I'm going to try to, as a producer, I'm going to try to help you and guide you to get to those directions. And if there's any pitfalls, we're going to try our best to avoid them. But, you know, at the end of the day, if it doesn't sound like you, it's pointless. You know, it's just not, it's not worth it. It's just, it becomes an ego show for me and not a song that represents who you truly are.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point. I mean, but like I say, from the very first day we met, you know, you approached me at an open mic after I played the song. And so I knew you were genuine from the start about like the fact that you actually enjoyed the song and were entertained by it. So I was like, okay, he's got good intention there, you know, and it rang true through the whole process. So again, thank you, brother.
That's awesome, man. I appreciate that a lot. Let me ask you then, what was the factor that made you say, like, I should do this with Rhynestone Production, I should do this with a virtual studio, as opposed to going to a recording studio or working with any other. Atlanta's full of music producers. What made you decide to work with Rhynestone as opposed to another way of recording the song?
I mean, kind of like I was saying, like the way you approached me and were just really genuine about it. I didn't feel like there were any ulterior motives, and it just felt very organic, And if I would go to a studio or try to look around, you never know what their intentions could be. You know what I mean? As far as what they want to maybe get out of the artist and whatnot. So it just felt like it felt really good from the start. You know what I mean?
Well, that's awesome. So I want to ask you about the musicians that worked on your song. You had, I believe, 5 musicians, if I count right, that worked on your track. Yeah. And did you feel that do you feel that those musicians benefited your track and made the track better? And did they maybe take the song in a different direction than maybe you had anticipated? Or how did you feel about the musicians that played on your track?
They were fantastic. I don't know if it took it in a different direction. It just sort of made it blossom. You know what I mean? The rough draft that I kind of put together were very, like the bass line especially was pretty generic and repetitive. So I was like, yeah, I want this to be the kind of the base root of it. But I was very willing for them to take some artistic liberty in making it, more complex. And they did a great job of that. That guitar on the third verse is just so killer, man. I mean, they all just did a great job.
Yeah, Fernando's a beast, man. He's so talented, and the sounds, it's not only just the way he plays, but the tone he gets is just so good.
Yeah. And the percussion too, I think the drummer nailed it with, he had the rim shots in the first half of the song and he kind of just built up as it went. That third verse is explosive, and then after that it's just, he rides it out really well. They just had a really good feel for the song, man. And the horn kind of captured that one melody that I sent, over in the original thing, but he expounded upon that as well. So I can't say enough about how good a job they did.
That's awesome to hear, man. I really appreciate that. So one of the things that we did with you that was different than a lot of other songs is we were with you from the get-go. Like you had the song written, and we worked really hard we did a couple sessions where we worked side by side, and I sat with you and we wrote the song together as far as like the form and the structure and what we took out. We rearranged it. Can you go over that process for you and maybe some of the things that you learned in that process in a songwriting consulting session with Rhynestone?
Yeah, I mean, that's the part that obviously for me is a little more tedious. I mean, I really love performing, and obviously you love the end product when you get something recorded. But that part of the process for me it gives me a little bit of anxiety because I'm just not super comfortable with it. So having you there to kind of guide me was invaluable, And yeah, I definitely learned a lot about just sort of the technical side of chopping things up and, having to do something repetitively in order to get a good version of it. That's just part of the process. So, but it was fun. Like I said, trying to do that on my own is more painstaking. So now that I've had a little more guidance, I think I can manage it on my own much better, Well,
that's awesome to hear. And that's something that I think is really important. One of the things I remember doing in those songwriting sessions with you was we talked about how in this kind of music, the funk soul genre, one of the most important things is we want to keep the dancers moving. We want to keep the dancers going. And I remember you had a lot of breaks in this music where you would slow down and slow the tempo down and kind of bottom out right before the chorus. And you can do that once in a song, but if you're doing that before every verse and every chorus and stuff like that. So I remember that was one of the things I kept saying, like, keep the dancers going. The dancers need this. And as someone, I believe you told me you've done extensive dancing in your background as well, right? Or some dancing?
Freestyle, yeah.
Yeah, hey, that's what's up. That was something that I remember really connecting with you and being able to and take that further. And I remember that was like a big, I remember just keep saying, like, you'd play the song and there'd be certain parts we were working out and I was like, all right, are we keeping the dancers moving? And I remember that. And I think that the track, the final product we came up with, like, dancers are going to dance the whole way through that song. It's just a good vibe.
Yeah. And I think when I perform, I do a lot of like footwork, and that's one of the charismatic aspect of that, gets people moving. So it's great to play music that's upbeat and, like you say, just doesn't bog down a lot. Just keeps things moving for sure.
Yeah. That's definitely, I think, one of those things. Because a lot of musicians don't dance. I think that's one of those things that when the musicians do learn that, like, it's better to have the dancers moving than it is to impress musicians, because those are the people that'll come back and come listen more. I think that's always a big light bulb moment for a lot of musicians. So I'm glad that we were able to have that moment together with you.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. So thinking about Rhinestone as opposed to some of the other things that you've done with your music, as far as like trying to get your music out there and stuff like that, I want you to be, now obviously I am in front of you, but I want you to be honest about, like, a lot of these music production studios, they don't have a producer. And I wanted to ask you, what was the benefit of having someone like me as a producer in there to help you through the process? What were some of the benefits that you had? What were some of the, if there's any negatives, feel free to talk about them. But what was the benefit of having not just the musicians and our team at Rhinestone, but having someone there to help guide you in the process?
I think, like I say, in the past, I've always been sort of a member of a band, and then there's a ringleader that kind of takes control of that kind of stuff. So when you're doing a solo career, you obviously kind of have to take responsibility for that and really, grab the reins and go for it. And, anything from the recording it to promoting things on social media to, getting the song distributed on streaming platforms, all of those things I got such a huge education about throughout this process. And, you never stop learning, obviously. But yeah, I don't think I would have gotten a lot of that from a lot of other production studios. It just felt like a much more personal touch. Again, I know for a fact you actually enjoy the song, and you genuinely want to help artists be the best version of themselves they can be. And, I haven't worked with production studios at all, but I don't get the sense that I would get that personal sort of touch from them, so.
No, well, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate that. You're going to make me cry.
I'm a very personal person myself. I'm a massage therapist by profession. I've been doing it for 15 years. So, a little side note there, but I think there's a lot of people in business that are only in it for the business side of it. And in my industry, you have to be much more personal, and people can see through people who are not, so I appreciate that when I see it in other people's businesses and just any aspect of their life,
Well, that's awesome, man. And that's definitely something I try to do is like you said, with the massage therapy, it's like, it is such a personal thing to you're touching bodies. I'm touching people's like art, and so I want to make sure that I leave it in a better place than I found it. And a lot of times it's just one or two little things can like really take a song off course if you're not careful and you're not and so it's like I always want to make sure that, okay, we're getting back to these things, because these, even if you think you're breaking the rules, or the rules are there for a reason and they work, and a lot of people don't know those rules. So like, keep the dancers moving is one. Tight songs, Drunk Driver and Tow Truck Driver is like intro, verse, chorus, chorus, out. Yeah. And there's never a dull moment in the song. And so it's like, those kind of things where a lot of people wouldn't care about them as much. So it's like, for me, it's a matter of we follow these guidelines. We can bend them every once in a while. There's songs where they get bent, but we follow these guidelines for tight songwriting, great musicianship, good mixing and mastering. And most of the time, 95% of the time it works, because we work through it through the whole process. And so and I love that. That's why I do what I do, is I love seeing the final product, and I love seeing how excited people got listening to the song. And I mean, I don't know about you, but I got so many compliments of like, oh man, this is the best thing Rhinestone's done. This is like when we had your single release party a couple weeks ago. Yeah. And just it was really good, because I know that what I'm doing is working, and what you're doing is working as well.
100%, dude. I mean, it's like you say, the little things. I know we talked about making sure the song grabs them at the very beginning, because people's attention span is so short these days, and it's kind of music is congruent with all the other aspects of media that are out there. So that was another, important little tip about the song, about how we need to just grab them as soon as it starts, or they're going to move on to the next thing. That made a lot of sense.
That's awesome. And 100% agree. If you don't get them quick, you're going to lose them. And then unfortunately in the TikTok age, that's even more true than ever.
Exactly.
So another thing that we did was your vocal session. We just made a post about this on Instagram, and we talked about kind of doing vocals. And I've probably told you this before, but my belief is the most important thing in a song always is the drums and percussion, and then the number two thing is the sound of the vocals and the performance of the vocals. Can you go through what a vocal session was like for Rhynestone with Rhynestone Productions?
Yeah, a lot of preparation. I mean, going back to my musical history, I sang in chorus in my early teen, late teen years, and I was always so much better about the vocal warm-up type stuff. So when you came over and we started to do some of that stuff, it took me back, and I was like, man, I really gotten away from some of the basic kind of fundamental discipline type things you need to do for your voice. So I've actually started practicing those a little more, which has been good for me. But it makes a huge difference. I mean, the T, the hitting the scales, different, enunciation type practices, all of that stuff makes a difference.
What about the actual recording of going through all the takes and stuff like that? Like, what was that experience like for you?
Well, you said if there was one thing negative, I mean, it was great. We got great takes out of it, but it was just, again, I get sort of anxiety from that stuff, like, because I think you're your own worst critic, you know what I mean? Especially hearing your own voice back and like, it was good, but it's just a little off right there. You're really good about being diligent and saying like, that was good, but I think we can get something better there, So like I say, at the end of the day, we got some great stuff out of it. And I think my voice is the biggest thing that I'm critical of with the recording. But we did a great job. I got a lot of compliments about those ad libs at the end too. Yeah.
Yeah, ad libs are great, man, and they're so underused. People just they don't think about it, and it's crazy because, like, you're not that much older than me. We grew up in the age of Usher, right? Like Usher, every Usher song, it's just it works, man, and it's just, especially if
a lot of the funk and soul music from the late 60s or early 70s, they definitely do a lot of almost scat type stuff.
Yeah, it's from the church. It's from church. They grew up in the church and they're doing that stuff. If the spirit moves you, kind of things. And I love it. Those ad libs were one of my favorite things to do, and just like we just went for it. And I think it just makes the song that much better.
Yeah. I don't think if they weren't there on that last chorus, it would be too repetitive. Like, it makes that last chorus a little different and gives it some, a little more dynamicism. Dynamic. Yeah,
dynamic.
Like that.
Well, that's awesome. So the last thing I want to ask you about is the mixing and mastering process for you. As someone who hasn't done a lot of recording, how did you feel that the mixing and mastering process was with Rhynestone? Did you feel that you feel like that things made sense, that you were understood? Did you feel like, because there's a lot of jargon in mixing and mastering that, especially for someone who hasn't done a lot of it, it can be very overwhelming and confusing. What was the process like for you?
It was kind of foreign, obviously, but I felt like you guys, I just put a lot of trust into you guys to handle it, to be honest with you, if I'm being completely honest. Yeah, I mean, it's like I say, kind of foreign. I mean, I understand what the purpose of it is, but at the end of the day, that's the technical side that you guys are experts at.
Well, I appreciate you putting a lot of trust in us, because obviously it can get very nitty gritty very quickly. So I'm very happy that it was a good, smooth process for you.
Yeah.
So Slim, I wanted to ask you, what is next for you? What for your musical journey? What is happening next? Are you writing? Are you going to record more? Are you going to be playing shows? Are you building a band? What's next for you for the next 6 to 12 months?
Literally all of the above, man. I played 5 songs at the release party. So my goal is within a year to have the other 4 songs recorded. That's about 1 every 3 months or so, which I think is doable.
Mm-hmm.
Still writing all the time, looking for inspiration everywhere. my buddy, shout out to Nick Heredia. We've been getting together and just playing a little bit here and there, seeing what we can come up with. And it's been kind of fun, actually. And it looks like we're going to be roommates by the end of the year. So, we'll have a lot more time to collaborate and see what we can come up with. So that's exciting. And yeah, man, other than that, just performing as much as possible. I need to start really gigging and like focusing on that, seeing what I can make happen in that department, getting Slim's name out there. See where we can take it.
Well, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Slim. I appreciate your time. Again, everyone should go stream Drunk Drive and Tow Truck Driver on all streaming platforms everywhere right now. This was just such a great song, and it's going to just, I can't wait for what you do next. I think you've just got so much potential as an artist, as a songwriter, as a musician, and I know the world's going to blossom for you real soon.
Man, I can't thank you enough, Banner. Like, just for your friendship in general, honestly. I mean, you caught me at a kind of a dark place in my life, and I've been coming out it, and I can see a very bright light now, and it's exciting, and you were a big part of that process. So thank you, brother.
Oh man, you're welcome, man. I'm so glad I could help you. That was Chuck McNulty, otherwise known as Slim Picknz, who was on our podcast. We were so happy to do Drunk Drive and Tow Truck Driver with him. I think it's one of the best songs Rhynestone has done. It blows my mind that a bunch of Brazilian musicians were able to make this incredible, like, Muscle Shoals swampy groove. I mean, it sounds like not a Bill Evans record, Bill Withers record. It just sounds so good. It's so unbelievable. And with that stated, I want you guys to go check out Chuck's new song, Drunk Drive and Tow Truck Driver, wherever you stream music. It is fantastic. It's such a good song. I listen to it on the regular, even though I produced it, and it just doesn't get tiring to me. It's just such a great track. So that is our show, folks. Thanks so much to our guests. Thank you to Luke Lemons. Thank you to Chris Ray King. Thank you to Slim Picknz for showing up and talking about their experience with Rhynestone Production. I want everyone to know that if you do 4 instruments with us at Rhynestone Production, we put you on our podcast. We put you on blast. This is content for you. This is one of the services we offer here at Rhynestone to help people understand what you do, and also get you in front of new people, get you in front of the mic. We make great content based around these clips, and we share them everywhere. It's a really great way to get yourself in front of other people. And so if you want to be a Rhynestone musician like these people, I want you guys to email me, rhynestonemusic@gmail.com. That's RHYNESTONE music@gmail.com. And let's get started on a song. I would love to work with you guys. 2024 is going to be a big year for us as far as getting all the content going, getting all the music going. We're going to do more podcast episodes. Everything is going to be to the max for 2024 for Rhynestone Productions. And we want to work with great artists like yourself who are willing to check out podcasts like this. So I'm going to tell you guys what, I'm going to give you guys a little bonus if you guys made it through this whole episode. If you text the word banner, if you put the word email descriptive word banner, BANNER, that's my first name, in the description, I'm going to give you guys 25% off one instrument when you work with us, which is going to be awesome. That's a huge savings for an artist like yourself, and it's really going to put a good jump start into what we're doing here at Rhynestone. So email the word banner to rhynestonemusic@gmail.com, and I tell you what, we're going to be super excited to work with you. So just to give you guys an idea of the songs we used today, all these songs are Rhynestone songs, by the way. The first song we had on the podcast, which is the intro and outro music, is Target Rockstar by Maddie Music Madness, who hopefully will be rejoining us for another song here real soon. The next song we used was Luke Lemons, which is End of My World. That featured Erickson on drums, and it featured Bruno on cello. Great track. You guys should check out Luke Lemons' latest album. Rhynestone is all over it. The second song we used is Half a Heart by Chris Ray King. We used that in the first break between the episodes. Half a Heart is streaming everywhere by Chris Ray King. Fantastic song. Great tune. I really love it. And then on the second ad break, we used Drunk Drive and Tow Truck Driver by Slim Picknz. And make sure Picknz is Picknz. Great tunes all around. And my name is Banner Driscoll. You can find me anywhere on social media at Banner Driscoll Media. I'm especially active on Instagram and TikTok. You can find the Rhynestone Productions wherever you follow us. That is RHYNESTONE Productions, PRODUCTIONS. Hopefully I spelled that right. I'd also like to thank our editor, Irvin. Irvin has been killing it on these podcast episodes, helping me out a whole bunch, really helping to get streamlined this process. It's been fantastic. And so if you guys haven't yet, please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell if you're on Spotify or on YouTube, whatever. That stuff really helps us out. We're trying to get this podcast monetized so we can make more money, so we can make better content and kind of keep that cycle going. So anything you do helps. And I just want to thank you guys. And until next time, happy music making.